So much for joining me and welcome to the live stream. Whether you are here with me live or whether you are watching the replay, I am so grateful you are here because today I am going to answer a question that maybe you have asked yourself in the past. Today I'm going to cover the question that I get asked all the time, which is the question, does your language need to change? Whenever I have a conversation with a couple that they want to work with me and they have a free consultation with me, what usually happens is that one of the partners is the one who initiates the consultation with me. And when they come to the consultation on Zoom on video conference, both of them show up on the screen. And the partner who was invited or sometimes dragged on to the consultation with me is usually the partner who says to me, Alejandra, seriously, does my language need to change? Does my communication need to change? And if so, why? That is what I am going to cover in this live today. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alejandra Siroca from languagealchemy.com. I am a transformative teacher and coach, and I teach people like you to have more ease and harmony in your life and relationships through transformative communication. So, today, without further ado, let's go back and answer that question, whether your communication needs to change, whether your language needs to change. Perhaps you have asked yourself that question. And if you have ever asked yourself that question, I would like to know in the chat. Have you ever been curious about whether your language or your communication needs to change? And if so, just write yes in the chat. Whether you're watching this live or later on you watch the replay, I would love to know. I'm going to put the chat here, okay? So have you ever wondered whether your communication, your language needed to change? If you've ever have, then write yes in the chat. I would love to know that. And that also helps us have some dialogue, some conversation. So Connie, thank you for being here. And you said yes. All right, beautiful. And some of you, even if you watch the replay, I'd love to know if you've ever answered that question. I actually sincerely hope, and Dasa, you've said yes, you've been curious about whether your language needs to change. I sincerely hope that you have asked yourself that question, even if that question was asked by you just a few minutes ago when I announced the topic of this live, or maybe you've been asking that question for many years, many months. But in order to answer that question, let me tell you a little bit of a story where you are the main character. You are the protagonist. When you were born, you came to this world with the ability to speak a language and with the ability to learn to speak a particular language. And at that time, when you were born, when you were a little baby, your language was given to you. Your language was taught to you. So for example, part of what you learned was that if you came into a household where people spoke English, you learned English. But if you came into a household where people spoke Urdu or Japanese or Italian or Spanish or Hindi or Russian, that is the language that you learned. And as you were exposed to this particular language, you started learning and paying attention to the ways in which you could get what you needed using that language. And you were paying attention to how you could get what you needed at a time when you had lots of needs. Because let's face it, you were pretty unhelpful to yourself. You couldn't help yourself. there wasn't really much you could do, and you depended on others. So, for example, you couldn't move out of that house because you didn't even know how to walk. Or you couldn't get ice cream every day if that's what you wanted. I know that as a baby, I definitely wanted ice cream every single day. And then as a toddler and a teenager, okay, we're going to stop there. But ice cream is something I love, as you can tell. So if as a baby you wanted ice cream every single day, you couldn't have it because you were not the one who was choosing going to the fridge or choosing what to eat every day. You couldn't even feed yourself. You couldn't even if you decided, you couldn't stand in front of your closet to try to figure out what you were going to wear that day because the clothes that you wore were chosen for you. Everything was given to you, and that includes the language that you were speaking, the language that you were learning. And that language included how to talk about not just things as clothing or nourishment or physical comfort and physical security and safety, but also in your emotional needs. And there was something very, very, very important that you could do at that time and that you actually did do at that time, which was to learn the language, the people who were taking care of you, who were making sure you had nourishment, you had clothing, you had love, and you had safety. You learned how to communicate in that language. And because you depended 100% on them, on these wonderful people who were taking care of you and making sure not only you were surviving, but that you were actually well and that you were thriving in your life, then as a way of connecting with them and also receiving those needs, you learn to communicate that language. You learn to collaborate with them, and the way you learned that particular language was a way of saying, I belong to you and you belong to me, and if you like me, then you are going to give me what I need. If I like you, and if I am like you, and I speak that language, then everything is going to go much easier. So this is how you've learned your language. So you listened, you repeated, you replicated how these wonderful, helpful people that were taking care of you taught you that language. You also learned from them what language they were using when they needed to express their feelings, or when they were describing their experiences, or you paid attention and close attention. You may not remember this, but that was your ability that you came to the world with. So you paid attention to how each person there influenced each other's behaviors and one another, and how they related through the use of language. And it took you about 7 years to get the full download of your language. And I'm not just talking about English or Urdu or Spanish or Italian. I am talking about that it took you about 7 years to get that language that you started using to communicate your feelings, your experiences, how it was for you when you were excited or angry or sad or exuberant or grateful or tender, insecure, etc. And during these 7 years, you learned how to use that language to ask for what you needed, to let others know and how to let others know when you didn't like what they were doing or what they were saying. How you also learned how to communicate when you regretted having done something that maybe you accidentally did that hurt someone or that another person didn't like. You also learn how to express what to say and how to say it when you felt uncomfortable, in pain. And so, in other words, You learned all these things from your parents, your caregivers, and what you learned was and is now the way in which you're mostly communicating when you are having these experiences right now, even though you are not 7 years old anymore, or you are not 0 to 7. So the language that you are speaking most of the time is still influenced by the language you learned when you were from 0 to 7, by the language of the people you grew up with. And so, for example, if when they were overwhelmed, they didn't know how to express that, most likely it's hard for you to express yourself clearly, confidently, or compassionately when you feel overwhelmed. If they felt very comfortable expressing themselves when they were confused, then it's probably very comfortable for you to express yourself when you are confused. If you grew up in a household where when things were painful or uncomfortable, people didn't know how to talk about them and they swept them under the rug and they pretended everything was fine, then probably when your closest people, the ones that matter to you the most, come and they want to have an important conversation with you about something that is painful or uncomfortable for you, you want to pretend or you show that everything is fine, even though there are a million signs to them pointing to, no, you are not okay. But you may not want to talk about it. You may go into the other room, or you would say, or you make a joke, you try to distract people and you say, oh, everything is fine. Or you wait until they forget about it and then you don't need to talk about it. The good news is that you were born with the ability to speak a language. You were born with the ability to learn how to communicate with others, to share and reveal your internal experience with others using language. And I want to tell you now, you were an excellent student. You've done it. You did it. Congratulations. And you're still alive, which means that if you're still alive, you are still learning. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you now, does your language need to change? Well, the answer is, you ready? The answer is, it depends. If you are having the kind of life and relationships that you really want to have, if you are living up to your own values and your vision of your life, then you don't need to change your language. So Connie, you wrote yes, but I'm not sure if it's yes that your language needs to change. I think maybe you have said yes, your language needs to change. Or maybe, yes, you are living the life that you want and having all the relationships that you want, and they're all really going well. So what I would say is that if you're feeling a deep sense of connection with yourself, others, and life, if you're waking up in the morning feeling gratitude for how your life is and all the people in your life, if you feel heard, understood, if you feel seen, if you feel known by the people who matter to you the most, then no, your language doesn't need to change. Now, if your relationships don't feel meaningful and maybe they feel superficial, if they don't feel fulfilling, maybe they feel mandatory, obligatory, like there's a sense of obligation about the relationships you have. If you are dissatisfied because your life or your relationships feel limiting or frustrating or painful or not deep enough, or there's no harmony, there's conflict all the time, arguments, or you don't feel a sense of peace, or you don't feel that you can be your authentic, real you, especially with those you care about, then yes, your language needs to change. Because what's happening is that you are speaking the language that you learned from 0 to 7 years of age, and you are no longer 7. So Instead of saying maybe my language needs to change, I want to offer you the expression, my language needs to catch up with me so that I can communicate in a way that represents the mature adult that I am now, and not the 7-year-old or 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 months old baby. And so if your language needs to catch up with your age, then you need to teach your language to grow up with you. And let me tell you, it is possible. I have done it. My clients do it in every session, and some of you are here. So yeah, that's how you say my language needs to catch up with me so I can communicate in the way I am now. Yes. And it can be done. You have learned a language, you have that ability, you can learn how to use that language in different ways in alignment with your values, with your age, with who you are right now. And you can do this and when you do this, you're going to see that what's going to get transformed. And that's why what I do, I call it transformative communication. What's going to get transformed is your own relationship with yourself, with life, and with others. And you will have the connection, the peace, the harmony, the meaning, the fulfillment, the satisfaction that you have been wanting maybe for years. Now, I want to say one more thing. I have done it. Clients that I work with have done it. You can do it too. And a very simple way in which you can do this is to continue to study and reflect on and think about your language and your communication. And if you would like a little nudge and a little invitation to consider your language, to think about your language and become more and more aware of your language in a simple, practical, and free way, one of the things that you can do, there are many, of course. Something you can do is sign up to my mailing list, where every week I send a 3-minute video with practical tips so that you can use in the moment to reflect on your language and communication, to think about language and communication, and to communicate in a way that's going to grow that language up. I hope this was helpful. Let me know how this is for you. Any comments are welcome, questions and objections as well. They are all welcome. You are welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week on Friday, 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern. Thank you. Bye.